using the parlays against one another, right, and being able to get a little bit of juice consig, I found to be a little interesting.
Believe me, all the rhombuses and parallelograms are constantly trying to search and find out those things every day. It's one of the battles that you know, as you expand the menu, you encounter new battles.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer, too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
With the onset of NIL and the transfer portal, it is allowing players to develop further in college, and guys that would maybe be stuck on the bench at a power program and not have as much shine are having the ability to find themselves in the spotlight.
Lane Kiffin came out and said we need to get bigger and more physical in terms of the offensive defensive lines, and that's why he went out and recruited that talent.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
And now you have to qualify, and these majors, you got to go do it, man. Like, and it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not.
You know what you signed up for, so I don't like the pettiness, and I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships. Mm-hmm. So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now, and you don't deserve anything.
Only on SportsGrid.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Craig Mish back with you. Hope you had a nice Memorial Day holiday weekend. We're back here on this Tuesday, getting ready for the finals in the NBA. Plenty to talk about here on the show. We got Matthew Waters from Legal Sports Report, also Gilbert McGregor with the very latest on the National Basketball Association. In addition, another golf tournament coming up this week. So Brady Kannon will give out his picks, tell us what he thinks could potentially happen this week at the RBC Canadian Open. And, of course, we're following Major League Baseball as well as we get ready, of course, for the summer, which is a lot of baseball and maybe not as much NBA. My gosh, is it possible that we won't have the NBA playing games for a week? NBA may have to fix this because the Boston Celtics, last night, they swept the Pacers. They get the win, 105-102. Celtics 12-2 now in the postseason. Interesting that they can't cover a spread, but they can win a game. They beat the Heat 4-1. They beat the Cavs 4-1. They swept the Pacers 4-0. Jaylen Brown with 29 points in the game. Jason Tatum with 26 points in the game. Naturally, at this point, Boston waits the outcome of what could be another sweep tonight between the Timberwolves and Dallas Mavericks. As we await the outcome of that, we'll have a preview coming up a little bit later in the show. But first, let's hear from Jason Tatum, who, of course, is heading back to the NBA Finals after a very successful series to close out a win against Indiana.
And obviously, going back to the finals, special accomplishment for you guys. Is there a difference? Is it kind of like the same type of emotions? What's that like for you?
It's special, right? Even though we've been there before, most of us have. You don't take it for granted, right? We were excited. It was a hell of a team we just played. They made us earn every single game, and we're extremely grateful to move on to the finals. Yeah, I mean, the playoffs is like an emotional roller coaster. And trying to find a balance right in between the wins and the losses, trying to stay even-keeled throughout the entire, however long you're playing, is important. The team that does that the best usually has a lot of success.
Jason, obviously, there's obviously a lot that's happened since you guys were last in this position a couple of years ago. As a group, for you and Jaylen, the guys who've been here, like, what is different about you guys specifically in terms of growth over the last couple of years, and how do you think that will help you get the 4 wins you're looking for over the next few weeks?
Learning from our experience, right? That playoff run was a lot of up and downs. Obviously we fell short of the ultimate goal. last year, lost in the conference finals. So I think, we've just applied everything that we've learned to this season, this postseason, and, it's been working really well.
And, of course, the Boston Celtics, likely favorite, I would say, going up against whoever they do in the Western Conference. Again, that game will be played tonight between Minnesota and Dallas. Now, as far as the Indiana Pacers are concerned, very successful end of the season for them, getting as far as they did, no question, especially with the play of a couple of players on their team, Halliburton being one. The other one is Pascal Siakam, who may have played his last game with the Indiana Pacers after a very strong regular season and postseason. He talked about now heading to free agency with his season coming to a close.
I think, obviously, I'm not going to talk about, all that, but all I can say is that, it's been a blessing. And I'm really appreciative of everything, I think coming from where I come from, it means a lot, and the support that I've received here, is something that, I was kind of missing, and having all that, and seeing how a city just breathes basketball, and just how much support they give to the team, just being here, the home games. I mean, it's incredible. How would you not be a part of that? So I think for me, I'm just really blessed and happy for, how this has been. And I think that, in terms of future, whatever happens is going to happen.
The third season, as you would say in the NBA, regular season, postseason, and then free agency season about to get underway after the NBA Finals. Meanwhile, a very sad story from both the NBA and college basketball and even broadcasting yesterday, as it was announced that Hall of Famer Bill Walton passed away at the age of 71 years old, one of the best college basketball players of all time, led the Bruins to 2 national titles, of course, had a very successful career in the NBA, and won a couple of championships there, and then went on maybe to be one of the most popular college basketball broadcasters, honestly, of all time. Very, very sad. Lost his battle with cancer, so condolences naturally to him. But a lot of people will remember him for playing his college hoops at UCLA and winning those championships with John Wooden. If that's before a lot of our times, which it was before mine, you remember him as a broadcaster doing Pac-12 basketball. Bill Walton passes away at the age of 71. Meanwhile, the most valuable player in the Eastern Conference Finals was Jaylen Brown. Not a huge surprise there. Had a monster finals for the Boston Celtics, getting them there. Kentucky's DJ Wagner Jr. has reunited with his coach, John Calipari. First team all-SEC freshman has decided to leave the Wildcats and will join Calipari with the Razorbacks. Tonight in the WNBA, the Sparks take on the Fever. Caitlin Clark versus Cameron Brink, number 1 versus number 2. Cool story there. Phoenix Mercury take on the Connecticut Sun. Sun are huge favorites in this one. They are 8-point favorites. Also, Seattle will take on Chicago. Now, there's updated news on sports betting's tax revenue, which could potentially affect things going on across the country. And that is, in fact, going on in Illinois, as the Senate has approved a sports betting tax hike for 2025, which includes a 40% rate on operators with the highest adjusted gross revenue. Remember, it's the highest since New York's 51% tax rate, and would have Illinois in second place as far as the second highest tax rate in the United States of America. The Atlanta Braves will have to decide what they choose to do as far as replacing Ronald Acuna Jr. No word yet, although he has torn his ACL and will miss the remainder of the season. Let's not forget the Braves did win the World Series without him a few years ago. He was having a disappointing start to his year. 4 home runs, 15 runs driven in, 16 stolen bases in 49 games. Adam Duvall, one of the players that they have on the roster that will potentially replace him for now. Meanwhile, Shohei Ohtani making progress in recovery from Tommy John surgery. Of course, he is hitting, but not pitching. Throwing from 60 feet last week, he has reached 80 miles an hour. He is not expected to pitch in this baseball season. He does lead the majors in batting average and is having a fantastic season. He'll make the All-Star game coming up in Texas in July. Craig Counsell returned to Milwaukee. He was booed by the hometown fans. They did a nice tribute video. It ended with a picture with him in a Brewers uniform. He, of course, is now the manager of the Chicago Cubs. Brewers ended up winning the game yesterday. The Baltimore Orioles keep rolling. Kyle Stowers, 4 RBIs against the Red Sox. He went 3 for 4 in the game. 11-3 the final on Memorial Day. In the National Hockey League, the Dallas Stars defeated the Edmonton Oilers. This could be a long series potentially. Dallas leads the series 2-1. Final score 5-3. The Oilers were minus 130 on the money line. Florida will play New York tonight. The swan song for Rafael Nadal at the French Open came and went pretty quickly. He lost to Alexander Zverev in the first round. This could be the last match that Nadal plays on the clay. He'll turn 38 on June the 3rd. He's had all kinds of issues with his hips and all kinds of injuries. By the way, 22 Grand Slams, 14 French Opens for Nadal. Brandon McManus, kicker in the NFL, is being accused of sexual assault on a plane that went to London last year. According to the lawsuit, 2 women who worked on the flight said that on September 28th, it quickly turned into a party. And McManus accused of doing some pretty lewd stuff, unfortunately, in this lawsuit. And also, the NFL this morning, the NFL Network is reporting that the Players Association are working to finalize the end of organized team activities. No more OTAs, with players reporting in mid-June to early July instead of the OTAs. Coming up next, we preview tonight's game in the NBA and talk about the life and career of Hall of Famer Bill Walton. Gilbert McGregor joins us coming up next on NewsWire. We'll be back right after this.
Game, whether it's a charge or a block or a deflection that was wrong or a foul that should have been called that wasn't called or vice versa. Give me a 48-minute report, and people that will understand that there's so many mistakes that the referees make over the course of the game that referees, ready folks, don't decide the outcome.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer, too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
With the onset of NIL and the transfer portal, it is allowing players to develop further in college, and guys that would maybe be stuck on the bench at a power program and not have as much shine are having the ability to find themselves in the spotlight.
Lane Kiffin came out and said we need to get bigger and more physical in terms of the offense and defensive lines, and that's why he went out and recruited that talent.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
And now you have to qualify, and these majors, you got to go do it, man. Like, and it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not.
You know what you signed up for. So I don't like the pettiness, and I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships.
Mm-hmm.
So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now, and you don't deserve anything.
Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Let's get into the latest in the NBA and, of course, preview tonight's game, look back in the past. Speaking of the past, what a life and career it was for Bill Walton, who passed away at the age of 71 yesterday. Gilbert McGregor joins us now here on the show. Gilbert, what a life for Bill Walton, who arguably was one of the best college basketball players of all time at UCLA. Went on to have a great career in the NBA as well. Portland, of course, winning championship with the Boston Celtics. A big fan of the Grateful Dead, big fan of being funny on broadcasts, and lived his best life, so to speak. Caught me by surprise. I didn't even, have any of this coming, but, no one really with a negative thing to say about Bill Walton, which tells you all you need to know about the guy.
Absolutely, Craig. I think those are the biggest points when I think about the life and legacy of Bill Walton. One, that he has an argument to be one of the greatest college basketball players ever, 3-time National Player of the Year at a time where freshmen couldn't play varsity. So he was 3 for 3 with National Player of the Year awards, and thinking about what he did with the Blazers and winning that franchise a championship and winning MVP, and then redefining himself later in his career after injuries to be a 6th Man of the Year and play a great role for arguably one of the best teams in NBA history, that Celtics team. But the biggest thing is, the life that he led outside of the lines, and seeing all the stories that everybody shared about their times encountering Bill Walton. Everyone left a smile on my face. So it just kind of speaks to the impact that he had, during his time on Earth, and the legacy that will definitely live forever.
Yeah, I think so too. A lot of fun watching this guy call basketball games. Called a baseball game last year as well. All right, let's get to Celtics Pacers. Gilbert, you pretty much nailed this one. Not a long series. Ended up going less than the 5.5 over on FanDuel, 105-102. What's interesting to me, I guess, Gilbert, is that Boston can't cover a spread, but they sure can win a game. That's kind of the story of the series.
Absolutely. It's funny. They found ways to continuously win, and I guess you could say the Pacers continue to find ways to lose as well. Looking back at this series, and really 3 games that could have gone either way. The Pacers were plagued by turnovers down the stretch, and the absence of Tyrese Halliburton as well. But obviously you have to acknowledge the absence of Kristaps Porzingis for the Celtics, which them winning this series in 4 games and somehow finding ways to take care of business and really kind of do away with some of the narratives that they are unable to win games in the clutch. It will be a huge favor to them. Now they have 10 days off as they prepare for the finals, and they'll probably get Kristaps Porzingis back in the lineup. So a very weird series. It definitely felt closer than a sweep, but at the same time, it was clear the Celtics were the better team because they continued to find ways to win despite what the Pacers threw at them.
And sort of a story for redemption for Jaylen Brown, whose last postseason didn't go very well, much better this time around.
Absolutely. I think people were giving him a lot of flack for the contract he received, but who could blame him for signing that $300 million deal? He certainly lived up to it. I think it's big for him to get that Eastern Conference Finals MVP award. I know he said he doesn't win a lot of things. I think it was well-deserved. He had big moments in the series, especially that 3-pointer in Game 1, which again was the Celtics finding a way to win that game. So big kudos to him, and I'm sure that leaves the big trophy for Jason Tatum have that in his eyes.
Yeah, I would agree. Now let's get to tonight's game, Minnesota at Dallas. Mavericks 2, 1.5, depending on where you find the line. Why is Dallas only 2, Gilbert? Does this mean Minnesota has a real shot to take this thing back to Minneapolis tonight?
This is another series that doesn't feel like it should be 3-0. The Timberwolves have played really bad basketball and have still had opportunities and chances to win. So I think that the spread is indicative of them thinking that maybe the Timberwolves can get it together. Maybe Karl Anthony Towns can kind of get out of this awful slump that he's having at the worst possible time. Anthony Edwards was very aggressive in Game 3, but still couldn't do enough in that fourth quarter. The absence of Derek Lively II, who had that neck injury that looked really scary in Game 3 as well. I think they'll feel that because he's played such a big role for the Mavericks in this series. But to say that it's pretty much a toss-up, it's really interesting to see how that goes. So I do like the Timberwolves' chances just because they need to get one. They've had a few stinkers, so if they can just play the level that they played in that Denver series, I think they can send this back to Minnesota, but I don't think that they have a chance of winning this series.
Yeah, what's interesting is on FanDuel, if it goes 5 games and ends, Gilbert, plus 340. That's a nice little number there over on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Look at 5-1 if it goes 6 games, but I guess that's kind of what you're playing for tonight. If you do take Minnesota, why take them on the money line? Just take plus 340 to go 5 games.
Yeah, that's great, especially if you really believe in the fact that they can do this, have some pride, and not get swept. We know that no team has ever come back from 3-0. So, not even worry about thinking about that, but the fact that they do have talent and you can bank on those guys just kind of showing up. We saw them have that big comeback in Game 7 against the Nuggets. So if anybody's capable of at least kind of doing something and performing with their backs against the wall, it's this Wolves team.
And finally, the finals MVP, the odds are up on FanDuel. Tatum is the favorite, followed by Luka Doncic and Jaylen Brown. Do you see anybody else in the mix potentially there?
given the narratives of Kyrie Irving, that I could see him having a series where he turns in some legacy performances that, especially if he's playing, well, he will be playing against his former team if he advances to the NBA Finals. So there's going to be a narrative there with Kyrie Irving and the Celtics. So he could have a series. He's definitely seemed like he's ramping up as the playoffs have gone on. We saw what he did in game 1 of this Timberwolves series when he really kind of took over, and he had a big game last night in game 3 as well. So Luka Doncic is definitely the head of the snake, and he's the engine, and everything goes as he goes. But Kyrie Irving does have that big game capability, as we've seen during the 2016 finals and what he was able to do and hit those big shots.
Yeah, he does. Now, Gilbert, as soon as the NBA gets to the finals, is it odd? Is it odd to you, like it's odd to me, the fact that if Dallas wins tonight, there's no game for a week?
It is odd. It is very odd. I think they didn't anticipate there being 2 sweeps in each conference final series. I don't know if that's ever happened before, but it certainly doesn't happen often. So I'm sure that they at least can get some teams some rest, especially given the injuries, and hit the reset button. Maybe we can see a little bit healthier Luka Doncic and definitely see Kristaps Porzingis. But, you would think that they might try to move things around a little bit, but it's about getting it on TV when they can in prime time.
Yeah, I mean, more than a week. I think it's 9 days is when the first game would start, which is kind of crazy. It's like the Super Bowl. All right, Gilbert, great to catch up with you. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Craig.
All right, coming up next, Joe Madden joins us with a preview of tonight's game between Florida and New York, maybe the pivotal game in their 7-game Eastern Conference Finals series. So stay tuned for that. In addition, we'll hear from the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, Jaylen Brown. Don't go away.
Whether it's a charge or a block or a deflection that was wrong or a foul that should have been called that wasn't called or vice versa. Give me a 48-minute report. And people that will understand that there's so many mistakes that the referees make over the course of the game that referees, ready folks, don't decide the outcome.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer, too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
With the onset of NIL and the transfer portal, it is allowing players to develop further in college, and guys that would maybe be stuck on the bench at a power program and not have as much shine are having the ability to find themselves in the spotlight.
Lane Kiffin came out and said we need to get bigger and more physical in terms of the offensive defensive lines, and that's why he went out and recruited that talent.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
And now you have to qualify, and these majors, you got to go do it, man. Like, and it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not.
You know what you signed up for. So I don't like the pettiness, and I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships.
Mm-hmm.
So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now, and you don't deserve anything.
Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. If you watched the Boston Celtics play in last year's NBA playoffs, there was a lot of disappointment. And part of that reason was one player, Jaylen Brown. He did not have a good series against the Miami Heat and was rewarded with this mega contract in the offseason. Well, what did Jaylen Brown do? Well, he came back. He had a really good regular season, had a really good postseason, and really had a great Eastern Conference Finals, to the point where he ended up getting the Eastern Conference Finals MVP over Jason Tatum, which is sort of incredible considering where he was a year ago. And even Brown himself in the postgame last night didn't really anticipate him getting that award because I guess he just really hasn't won much before.
I wasn't expecting it at all. You know, I'll never win, so I was just happy that we won. And give credit to Indiana. You know, they played us tough. I know, like, people think that Indiana wasn't a good team or whatever the case may be. I mean, I thought they were as tough as anybody we've played all season. They were physical. They were fast. They put a lot of pressure on us. So shout out to them and respect to them.
Yeah, I mean, Jaylen Brown last year, if you go on social media, the comments that were talked about this guy, you know, not only even in the series against the Heat, but even after that point when he got that mega contract, talk about Boston Celtics having to eat their words with that. No question. Congrats to him and to the Celtics as well. Meanwhile, we have college football getting ready to start here coming up in less than 3 months. We've got Ben Stevens with a little bit of a preview as to one of the potential teams that could be underrated this upcoming college football season, considering how good Iowa State has been in the past. Only 7 wins last season for them. Could they push this thing over the top this year in a revamped college football landscape and conference? Here is the early lines, Ben Stevens.
We are less than 100 days away from the start of a new college football season, and here's an under-the-radar team to keep an eye on within the Big 12 Conference for 2024. It's the Iowa State Cyclones. Last year, a 7-win football team that had 6 losses. 5 of those 6 losses by 10 points or less. Iowa State always kept things close. Fast forward to 2024, the Cyclones' win total is 7.5. I like the over, and here's why. 84% of Iowa State's returning production from last season is back in Ames this season. That experience should matter for Matt Campbell, led by his quarterback in Rocco Becht. Some of the top targets back for Iowa State as well. The entirety of the starting offensive line, and if we're betting over 7.5 wins, maybe under the radar to win the Big 12 at 10-1.
Thanks very much, Ben. And of course, college football season coming. That means it's the end of the NBA and NHL seasons, but not quite yet. We still have some things to figure out. Speaking of which, how about the New York Rangers with an opportunity in South Florida tonight to go up 3-1 in their best of 7 series? What an incredible game the last one was. I don't know if you caught it, but Rangers went up big. Panthers came all the way back. And again, another overtime game. Could we have another overtime game in store tonight coming up for Game 4? Who else would we go to for a preview than our very own Joe Madden with tonight's game in the Eastern Conference Finals?
We have Game 4 tonight in the Eastern Conference between the New York Rangers and the Florida Panthers. Now, the Panthers are the favorite at home despite losing the last game, with the Rangers leading this series 2-1. Overtime win in Game 3, 5-4 final score. Unbelievable how many goals we saw with the defensive levels of both of these teams and goaltending. And I'm expecting this one to revert back to a lower scoring game. Give me the under 5.5 in this at -124. I do think defense and goaltending comes to play. And offensively, these teams are shot down. Now, if you do want to take a player to light the lamp, I think Matthew Tkachuk is playing so hot right now. He was able to get a couple assists in the last game. He's getting those shots on goal, and he's hungry to light that lamp. So give me a Matthew Tkachuk for the anytime goal at +185. But my main bet is the under 5.5. All the best, you guys. Back to you, Craig.
All right, thanks very much, Joe. Of course, coming up tonight on In Game Live, we'll have all the NHL action covered for you, so make sure you stay tuned to that. Now, coming up next here on the show, Matthew Waters joins us from Legal Sports Report, and there's a very big story in sports betting and a potential landscape changer. What does that mean? Well, most of you know that the state of New York has a 51% tax rate on sports betting. Now we have one that is at 40%. And we'll tell you which state that is coming up next, because this could be a precedent set for legislature and states all across the country to hike up sports betting's tax rate. We'll tell you all about it if you stay tuned, because coming up next, Matthew Waters joins us from Legal Sports Report with the latest. Don't go away.
call the entire game, whether it's a charge or a block or a deflection that was wrong or a foul that should have been called that wasn't called or vice versa. Give me a 48-minute report. And people that will understand that there's so many mistakes that the referees make over the course of the game that referees, ready folks, don't decide the outcome.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
With the onset of NIL and the transfer portal, it is allowing players to develop further in college, and guys that would maybe be stuck on the bench at a power program and not have as much shine are having the ability to find themselves in the spotlight.
Lane Kiffin came out and said we need to get bigger and more physical in terms of the offense and defensive lines, and that's why he went out and recruited that talent.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
And now you have to qualify, and these majors, you got to go do it, man. Like, and it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not.
You know what you signed up for. So I don't like the pettiness, and I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships. So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now, and you don't deserve anything.
Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Groundbreaking news in the world of sports betting that's seemingly flying under the radar here a little bit. We'll bring in Matthew Waters for the latest. As Matthew, we got the news that the state of Illinois is bumping up their tax rate on sports betting to an unprecedented number of 40%, which is only 11% less than the state of New York, and now higher than Ohio, if I'm not mistaken, and higher than Pennsylvania as well. The only thing that I would say is, as well, with that little asterisk for the time being, because I can only imagine that the states and the market share sizes like they are now. Remember, Illinois is a very high market share. Chicago is one of the top media markets in the country, so it makes some sense. But I got to tell you, Philadelphia, not far behind. Cleveland, Ohio, not far behind. I would guess that precedent is now set and others will follow. By the way, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, always happy to be here, Craig, especially when we have a story like this that, yeah, you know, when it comes out that people are raising tax rates, it doesn't always get through to the consumer what that can mean. And it can have some big implications for sports betting here and what that means for consumers in the long run. Basically, Illinois, they had the idea of raising it to 35%, a 35% flat tax. And luckily for some of the smaller guys, that got pared back a little bit in the Senate. So now we're looking at a tier that has, you know, if you make less than 30%, you're going to be taxed at 30 million, excuse me, going to be taxed at 20%. That goes all the way up to being taxed at that 40% on your gross revenue of 200 million or more for the year. There's only two operators that hit that, Craig, and obviously that's DraftKings and FanDuel. I checked the stock prices before we came on, and they're not great, Craig. 13% down almost for DraftKings at more than double its average daily volume already. And FanDuel in the U.S., they were down close to 7%. I believe that puts them near a new low. Remember, they just listed on the U.S. Not too long ago, but still not great for these operators. And there's a note from Carlos Santarelli at Deutsche Bank that really kind of breaks it all out great. And you look at what FanDuel paid last year. FanDuel paid $68 million in taxes at that 15% tax rate. they now would be paying, based on the last 12 months numbers, they would be paying an additional $81.6 million in taxes. DraftKings is similar, $66 million in taxes last year. If we looked at the last 12 months, another $66 million in taxes on top of that, based on the new tax rates. And so, yeah, Craig, we have to look at what exactly this means for Illinois right now. And I know we'll touch on some other states later, but like you said, Illinois is huge, and they're not even done building out their sports betting market, except now I think they are, if this goes through. Remember, they have some of those online only licenses that are available at $20 million each, which you might be able to make that math work somehow if the tax rate was still 15%. It's tough now. It is going to be tough for these operators to be able to continue to keep up their level of investment that they had in the state when you have such a jump like this. And yeah, of course, it is not up to the state to worry about what the companies do, how much money they make, right? They agreed to be here, and that's that. But it's tough, Craig. Now, we haven't seen it yet. We have not seen the effect put onto the bettors. We have heard in New York, DraftKings said that they may have to start to offer worse odds, and that was said last year. And we've heard similar things from other companies, but we just haven't necessarily seen it. We have seen worse odds come through in the ways of different parlay products and what they're doing. DraftKings obviously now has the parlay product that will allow you to lose a leg or two of your parlay, but naturally you're not getting the same kind of odds as a true parlay with that. So the operators have been finding ways to find money here or there, but honestly, Craig, that was really just making sports betting profitable and attractive for these companies. Before PASPA in May 2018, the argument was that these companies made about 5%, 5 cents on the dollar for every dollar that's bet. And that is trending up because of these parlays. And so when you start to see that operators are holding more than what they said they would, when they were lobbying for this legislation and lobbying for the lower tax rates because it was a low margin business, now the conversation has changed with how they're making business. And so I do understand the conversation changing in the legislatures. Just have to make sure that you're not damaging or potentially ruining the industry in front of you. Illinois, yes, big numbers out of Illinois. I doubt operators are going to stop operating in Illinois, but will the product look different? We're getting to the point where it may have to in some of these states that are making the move.
Yeah, and there is a fight going on, by the way. It seems like there is this group that's trying to step up and stop the tax rate, and there's also a sports betting alliance that is going to try and keep the customers in tap too. Do you think they have any success with this, or this just basically just keeps moving?
I'm not sure, Craig, because the SBA, the two biggest partners there are DraftKings and FanDuel. So, they are out here pounding the pavement. They have pop-ups coming up on their apps in Illinois saying, email your legislators. They're trying to do as much as they can, and it didn't work in Illinois. So I don't know what kind of influence they're going to have moving forward.
Let's now get to the main story of the summer, which is wondering whether or not we're going to have college player props coming up in the fall. College football season, Matt, as you know, is coming up in August here around Labor Day. It's not that far away. Different states are taking different sort of stances on this. The NCAA president, Charlie Baker, is involved as well. What can you tell us the latest is?
Yeah, I would encourage anybody interested in this to head over to LegalSportsReport.com. Check out Mike Mazzio's article on this. He does a great job. There are a lot of different viewpoints in this article that I simply can't get across to you in this one segment. But we know that Charlie Baker wants the end of player props around the U.S. on college players. And it's interesting to hear how that is playing out with some people. You have the NCAA Managing Director of Enforcement, Mark Hicks, saying, Could that move people offshore? Yeah, it could. But also, we encourage federal law enforcement to go after the unregulated black market. So the NCAA, in Hick's point of view, at least, is saying, well, we're not the only ones that could be doing something about this. The federal government should be doing something about this. Obviously, it's not that easy when it comes to shutting down these black market operators, Craig. It takes money trails, it takes paperwork to find, and the offshore guys are really good at not letting that happen. One of the other things that I thought was a great quote came from a regulator, an unnamed regulator, state regulator, that said, do you really think people are just going to comply with this and not gamble anymore? There's always going to be a-holes on the internet. First, we're banning college player props. At what point does it stop? So we're not done with this conversation. We have had some states, we've had West Virginia, we've had Ohio, we've had a couple others step up and say, yeah, let's end this. But others are saying, no, we don't want to do that. And others are still just up in the air on it. We know from Ohio, it was less than 2% of the handle on these college prop bets total that the operators had taken. So it's not a huge section of the market. But it's tough because you are sending people that want to bet on that to the black market. And that has to be tough for these regulators to weigh out. So it's still a very much so ongoing conversation.
Yeah, and again, limiting some of the bets could be the possibility for the future with these props. But again, we got to figure this out. We got 3 months to go. All right, Matt, thanks for coming on. Great to see you again. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
All right, coming up next, RBC Canadian Open coming up. Brady Kannon is too.
Missed call the entire game, whether it's a charge or a block or a deflection that was wrong or a foul that should have been called that wasn't called or vice versa. Give me a 48-minute report. And people that will understand that there's so many mistakes that the referees make over the course of the game that referees, ready folks, don't decide the outcome.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer, too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
With the onset of NIL and the transfer portal, it is allowing players to develop further in college, and guys that would maybe be stuck on the bench at a power program and not have as much shine are having the ability to find themselves in the spotlight.
Lane Kiffin came out and said we need to get bigger and more physical in terms of the offensive defensive lines, and that's why he went out and recruited that talent.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
And now you have to qualify, and these majors, you got to go do it, man. Like, and it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not.
You know what you signed up for. So I don't like the pettiness, and I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships.
Mm-hmm.
So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now, and you don't deserve anything.
Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Both Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, not at OTAs with the Cincinnati Bengals, both seeking new contracts. We'll see if that affects the season. Higgins, we know about. This is new, though, with Chase not being there. All right, let's bring in Brady Kannon, of course, and Brady does a great job covering golf for us, as well as his columns. Great information last week here on the show, no question. But I mean, Brady, tough place to start. I got to be honest with you. I didn't think that we'd be doing this to start our little chat here about Grayson Murray. Played in the tournament last week and ended up pulling out. According to reports here, he committed suicide, 30 years old. My gosh, like this completely shook up the PGA Tour. And I got to tell you, it just shows you just mental health, just so how important that is for people. And hopefully something can be learned from this, because naturally to see the players and the broadcasters breaking down after having to announce this was not something that I thought I'd be looking at this weekend.
Yeah, no, an awful story, a tragedy, and a loss of a guy that was really on the upswing of his life. He won just earlier in January at the Sony Open and talked extensively after that victory how he had struggles with alcohol and mental health and depression and anxiety, and felt that he was really turning the corner. He'd been sober for about a year. And a lot of people had just been with him recently before his passing and said he looked great and seemed great. So, it's weird. It looked like this guy had, gotten past a lot of his demons, but apparently not. And I think it just goes to show, I think we can kind of take a positive, as hard as it is to do. I think we have to, in our actions, turn the page and pay more attention, like you say, to mental health and realize that we just really never know what people have going on in their lives. So be more compassionate, feel free to say a kind word unprovoked. And, I think that can help people going forward. And I think these type of things, shed more light on these issues. And I hope and I believe that, it can be turned into a positive. Obviously, the PGA Tour already has, things in place where guys can go get counseling and talk to people and whatnot on the site of tour events. And this will probably only escalate those type of services. So, sometimes you have to go through tragedy to progress. And I hope that that's what's going to happen here. It's awful for his family. And I thought they handled it really well. They came out and they said what happened, and they said he would want the tournament to go on. And, I think they're taking a real positive approach to this as well and trying to turn things the other direction in light of what their son was struggling with.
Yeah, really, really tough to watch the interviews from the tour players. Really, really horrific scene, unfortunately, but hopefully a positive comes out of this with mental health in the future. Meanwhile, a positive on the course, Davis Riley, who, I mean, honestly, I didn't hear anybody discuss him last week going into this tournament. Yeah. He picks up his first individual victory on the PGA Tour. Scotty Scheffler came on strong in the end, not strong enough. Is this a contender for another tournament, or is this a one-off, you think, for Davis Riley, Brady?
Well, he's a pretty good player. He won the team event, the Zurich Classic last year. He lost in a playoff to Sam Burns at the Valspar. He's always kind of been a guy on the radar that's an up-and-comer. From what I understand, he may have been struggling with some nagging injuries earlier this year. He's not a total surprise, but he was this week. He was in the neighborhood of 250 or as high as 400 to 1. I know at BetMGM, they did not have a single ticket on him to win. The Westgate and the Circa books out here in Las Vegas had just, I think Westgate had one ticket on him at about $20 or so, and very small bets at Circa as well. So yeah, like you said, Craig, nobody was really on this guy. The books won pretty good with him getting to the winner's circle, also having a lot of exposure on Scotty Scheffler. So it was a good week for the books. But yeah, he's you have your elite players, then you kind of have your B tier. I think he's probably a B minus, and now certainly in that B minus category, a guy we've had expectations for, and maybe this vaults him to bigger and better things going forward.
All right, so we go from there to the RBC Canadian Open. Not the biggest field, not the strongest field, I probably should say this week, Brady, with Rory and everybody else. I mean, if Rory doesn't win, my gosh, someone's going to cash in big this week. Any sort of inkling as to which direction you're going to end up going this week with some of these guys? Because again, when you get like one big player and the rest of the field is just sort of up in the air, it does portend to some potential big long shots this week.
Right. And I am working on a couple. I looked at Seamus Power at 105 to 1. He makes some sense to me. I'm going to basically try and beat Rory and eliminate him and see if I can find somebody else. I landed on a couple of shorter shots, Alex Noren and Sahith Theegala, a couple of the marquee players in this field that make a lot of sense to me. And then I went with Aaron Rai, who's done very well here in the past, at 42 to 1. So, I'm going to leave Rory out there. He's won 2 Canadian Opens recently, and he won the last one played at this golf course. This is Hamilton Golf and Country Club in Hamilton, Ontario. They played the Canadian Open here last in 2019, and Rory won that one going away. So, it would make sense. And he's a hot player right now. He's been playing very well, but I'm going to try and find something other than him than, just one golfer at 4 to 1. I'm going to probably play a handful anywhere from 20 to 100 some to 1 and see if I can find a winner. This event is really gaining some momentum with the thrilling finish last year. Nick Taylor holding a 72-foot eagle putt in a playoff to become the first Canadian to win the Canadian Open in 59 years. And we go on a nice run here, Craig. The Memorial up next and then the U.S. Open. So this is the beginning of some real good golf going forward for the next few weeks.
Yeah, it should be fun. U.S. Open in June and the British Open later, of course, in the summer as well. All right, we'll keep an eye on some of that. I know Morikawa did not win this past week, but really great call by you. Finished top 5. It didn't look like it.
He was the only guy. He was the only guy to shoot all 4 rounds in the 60s, but didn't win. Finished 4th. But yeah, the guy's playing really well right now.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, really good call by you again. All right, Brady, have a great rest of your week, and we'll chat again next week ahead of the next Memorial Tournament. Thanks again. We'll be right back.
Whether it's a charge or a block or a deflection that was wrong or a foul that should have been called that wasn't called or vice versa. Give me a 48-minute report. And people that will understand that there's so many mistakes that the referees make over the course of the game that referees, ready folks, don't decide the outcome.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer, too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
With the onset of NIL and the transfer portal, it is allowing players to develop further in college, and guys that would maybe be stuck on the bench at a power program and not have as much shine are having the ability to find themselves in the spotlight.
Lane Kiffin came out and said we need to get bigger and more physical in terms of the offense and defensive lines, and that's why he went out and recruited that talent.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
And now you have to qualify, and these majors, you got to go do it, man. And it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not.
You know what you signed up for. So I don't like the pettiness, and I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships.
Mm-hmm.
So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now, and you don't deserve anything.
Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid as we get ready to wrap up the show. A reminder, we're right back here tomorrow with a recap of the Mavericks and Wolves here on the next edition of Sports Grid. In addition, we'll see where the NHL is as we get closer and closer to the end of the NBA's and NHL seasons. And, of course, we have the drafts coming up as well. But before we get to that, we're also coming up on another big event. We'll tell you all about it. But first, it's time for some last licks. And we get started with the former heavyweight champion of the world, Mike Tyson, on Monday, In Touch Weekly. Yes, In Touch Weekly. This is a magazine that you normally see at your grocery store. First reported that Tyson suffered a medical issue during a flight from Miami to Los Angeles. He became nauseous and dizzy to an ulcer flare-up 30 minutes before the landing on the flight. Now, Tyson, who is 57 years old, of course, has had his share of being in the news. Not a lot for this sort of stuff. And let's also keep in mind that Tyson is a couple of months away from fighting Jake Paul in a legitimate boxing match, which is coming up. So hopefully everything is okay with him, because Netflix certainly is hoping that everything is okay. And so many folks are counting on this match. Remember, we don't really get a lot of great boxing matches. Not to say that this one's going to be any better. Tyson, who's 57, I believe Jake Paul's like at least 25 years younger than him. Who even knows how this match is going to go? But regardless of that, a health issue for Tyson over the weekend. Everything does appear to be okay. All right, now the second topic was reported first by USA Today yesterday. You may know that guy right there on your screen. That's Angel Hernandez, a longtime umpire in Major League Baseball, who is probably known, unfortunately, for getting into more heated battles with players and getting calls wrong than he has for, sort of being a trendsetter for Latin American umpires here in the United States. Angel Hernandez, according to USA Today, is retiring effective today, which sort of came out of nowhere because there was, many thought process that Hernandez would just keep going as an umpire in Major League Baseball. Now, we don't know the entire story yet, but he also missed some time in May to an undisclosed issue or injury, which still has yet to be reported, and we'll see what ends up happening. But naturally, the world of Major League Baseball is celebrating today, because Hernandez did get himself into what we would say is a few ump shows, which essentially is getting the call wrong, saying that you're right, and then going to the replay and essentially showing that he did, in fact, get it wrong. But Angel Hernandez, not going to be missed in Major League Baseball, so to speak. He did have a very long career umpiring Major League Baseball. He also had a controversial racial discrimination lawsuit in 2017, alleging that he was passed over for crew chief because of an assignment because of race. But the umpires union is indeed very strong, and so Angel Hernandez decides to bow out. All right, now, of course, this weekend was a very special weekend for a lot of players in college baseball. We're heading toward the college baseball regionals, and then again, we'll get to the college baseball World Series in Omaha. But first, they made the announcements yesterday over on ESPN, and congratulations to Kansas State, who is headed to the Fayetteville Regional. They will take on a lot of different teams, which could potentially include Arkansas. Unfortunately, there was one very big mistake that was announced yesterday. The cameras switched over to the players, and they were seen that they were, in fact, not the Kansas State team, but they were the Kansas Jayhawks. Oh, my goodness. Are you kidding me? They used the wrong logo when they announced the team, making a Kansas graphic instead of Kansas State. Not the best look, unfortunately, there. Now, the players, of course, they don't care. They're headed to the college baseball regionals, maybe even to the college baseball World Series. But pretty big mistake, unfortunately. And the logo did disappear. The screen went blank for a couple of seconds. And in the end, they end up getting it right. But just goes to show you that we all do make mistakes with graphics. Not a great one, though, considering these two teams are rivals. But I digress. That'll do it for our show today. I want to thank, of course, everybody for watching and streaming us, however you consume the show. Also want to thank Brady Kannon, in addition to Gilbert McGregor and Matthew Waters. Those were our guest contributors today. Also, thanks to Joe Madden for her preview of the NHL games tonight. Thanks to our associate producer, Frank, and our producer, Michael Cohen. I'm Craig Mish. Coming up next, we have the early line, followed by Pharrell Coast to Coast. He's in the house tonight with a preview of tonight's game in the NBA and NHL. I hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday. I'll see you tomorrow morning for our next edition of NewsWire. Same time, same place, 11 a.m. Eastern, right here on SportsGrid. Have a great rest of your day.